All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, in this episode of State of the Braves, I want to be really directed in analyzing one big question, and that is, are the Dodgers really as good as the media are really selling them as being now? The Dodgers have had their run of baseball over the last several weeks this offseason, obviously signing Shohei Ohtani, signing Yamamoto, out of the Japanese league, and also trading for Tyler Glasnow from the Tampa Bay Rays. And, the media narrative out there is that the Dodgers are clearly the best team in baseball. They are the super team of all super teams. And obviously, as a Braves fan, I'm sensitive to that. Like, what the heck? The Braves are here, and yeah, they haven't done all these splashy moves over the offseason. There's some moves I kind of would have liked for them to make. So, there's that. And yet, on paper, it doesn't make sense to me for all of baseball and all baseball media to just pronounce the Dodgers as clearly being the best team in baseball. Now, I do think you can make an argument that they're better than the Braves, but I don't think it's obvious. I don't think it's clear. Most betting services have the Dodgers as the favorite right now, with the Braves second. Now, just because you're a betting favorite, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying that they definitely are the better team. And of course, these things come in waves depending on who's betting on what. But Fangraphs still projects the Braves to be the better team in 2024. So we're going to get into that in this episode, and I really want to try to, as unbiased as I can be, and obviously I'm not unbiased, I'm a Braves fan, but I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible in really breaking down these two teams, both for 2024, because that's obviously part of it, but also for the long haul as well. I mean, here the Dodgers have signed Ohtani to a 10-year contract. They've signed Yamamoto to a 12-year contract. These are really long-term contracts for sure. But how does the rest of the Dodgers roster look going forward? Here's the thing with MLB Network, ESPN selling the Dodgers as the best team in baseball. It benefits both of those organizations to sell the Dodgers, which, is the team of Hollywood, as the best team. It also benefits them to turn the Dodgers basically into the villains of the league. I mean, it sells tickets. It obviously promotes a lot of views to their networks and that sort of thing. And, the backlash of this is, I think the Dodgers are kind of becoming the new villains of baseball with these signings. Now, I'm not mad at Ohtani for doing what he did with this hugely deferred contract. It annoys me. Okay, I'm annoyed by the contract. But I'm not mad at the guy. I mean, most people wouldn't have done that, or maybe even thought to have done what he did to defer most of his $700 million contract way into the future. So, it kind of is what it is in that regard. I'm more annoyed with just the fact that it's possible to defer that much money. And I mean, that's a baseball MLB issue more so than a Dodgers issue or an Ohtani issue. That being said, what of course that did is it opened the door for the Dodgers to make some of these other big moves to kind of keep themselves from totally blowing up their CBT number, and their ability to go out and get Yamamoto, to sign him to a $300+ million contract, to go out and get Glasnow and extend him and pay him upwards of $25+ million a year as well. So, anyways, all of that is, I think it is kind of turning the Dodgers into the new evil empire. The Yankees used to be called that, and now it looks like the Dodgers are kind of buying their way into, to being this really good team. And I do think they are going to have backlash on that. I do wonder, with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Ohtani, these guys I typically think are like really good guys. Of course, we know that as Braves fans that Freddie Freeman is, but these are really good guys. They're not bad guys. They're well liked across baseball, and yet now they're on the Dodgers, which is viewed as this kind of villainous team now. And I wonder how those players are going to respond to that. Now, maybe it motivates them. Maybe it's not as it's not going to be as overblown as I think it's going to be as they enter the season. But we're well away from when the Yankees were the evil empire and trying to buy World Series, and we are pretty far away from the Astros being the villains with the cheating scandal. So I really wonder if the Dodgers are going to take on that mantle of being the new villains of baseball, and how those players under the microscope, under the Ohtani microscope, are going to deal with that pressure. The fact is, the Braves are not going to have to deal with that kind of pressure, and that's, even though it would have been really awesome to see Ohtani in a Braves uniform, that is the glass being half full in terms of that situation. The Braves, every team plays with a certain amount of pressure, but it's not like they're having to deal with 1,000 reporters in the locker room every day with Ohtani and all the pressure that's going to come with that. So I think that's a benefit to the Braves. I think it's hard to measure it, but I think it is going to be something the Dodgers are going to have to overcome. All right, so the the Braves and the Dodgers have definitely dealt with this offseason very differently. These off seasons have been polar opposites in terms of how these two great teams are dealing with their plans moving forward, their long-term plans, and it certainly highlights the very different paths that these two teams are taking. And it does remind me that there was a few years in which Alex Anthopoulos was working under the GM of the Dodgers, and then he comes out of that. Obviously, comes into a different organization with a different philosophy, but he didn't seem to take on that Dodgers philosophy that they have. But again, of course, the Braves don't have as deep of pockets. No one has as deep of pockets, apparently, as the Dodgers. That's not to say the Braves are being cheap. Right now, it looks like the Braves are spending about the third most money of any team in baseball. They're just doing it in very different ways, and I think in more thoughtful ways. You can argue some of the moves they've made this offseason, or if they should have used the money in different ways. But I've shared with you guys, I do like the Jared Kelenic move. I really think that that potentially could pay off. There's some risk to it, but I think he could be really a lottery ticket and could be a big player for the Braves long term. So anyways, again, what this episode is trying to answer is which of these two teams, the Dodgers or the Braves, will be better in 2024? Which team is built better for the long haul? And, ultimately, that's going to be proven out on the field, but I think we can look into their rosters a little bit and figure some things out. So let's analyze both rosters to give a fair analysis for the two teams that are clearly the best two teams in baseball. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and you're going to see a spreadsheet of both. And I don't know if spreadsheets really excite you. I don't know if they necessarily excite me either, but it's just a visual representation of how I'm trying to break down these two teams. All right, guys, here is my beautiful spreadsheet. I hope you really like it. If you are listening, well, you don't get to see the spreadsheet, but at least I will try to explain some of the things we're talking about in a way that you can basically get it. If you're on YouTube, I hope you appreciate all the colors I've provided for you guys on the spreadsheet. So right now we are looking at the roster of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't have every single guy listed up here. Basically what I've done is I've listed off the starting 9 position players for the Dodgers. I've included the top 5 starting pitchers for the Dodgers, and then at the bottom you can see, instead of listing off the entire bullpen and starters or bullpen and bench, I just have them listed as bullpen and bench and simplify things a little bit. So, these columns that this is how I'm breaking down the roster as we're analyzing the difference between how the Dodgers have built their team and how Alex Anthopoulos has built the Braves. Okay, I want to see which guys are homegrown talents, which guys were brought in as free agents, which guys were brought in via trade. And then I want to look at the Fangraphs WAR projections for each player in 2024. I'm not going to list out all of these. Again, this is why you particularly want to go to YouTube to see these numbers. I didn't make up these numbers. These are Fangraphs numbers. I promise, guys. And if you want to go to Fangraphs, you can look at those for proof. And then the last two things I want to look at is how long are each of these guys going to be a Dodger? So what is their final year that they're under contract with the Dodgers, and what will their age be in 2027, right? So that is, I don't want to just look at 2024 and are the Dodgers better or the Braves better in 2024. I also want to project out a little longer term as to, which team might be better in 3 or 4 years. Okay, so again, if you're looking at this, I want to explain some of the colors you're seeing on this spreadsheet. So the green, if a player is highlighted in green, this is a guy that I'm determining is a part of their core. And, there could be some arguments here of guys I did not include in their core. I mean, I don't have Gavin Lux in their core. I don't think he's really proven himself yet. I don't have Bobby Miller in the core, even though he's a very talented young pitcher. If he has a great year, maybe he is. Walker Buehler, he's coming back from Tommy John surgery, and he's also a free agent after this year, so I don't have him in the core. So I have, and I'll go ahead and list them off, Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, James Outman, Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Glasnow, and Yamamoto are all the guys I consider part of the core for the Dodgers. Now, because I'm not listing out the bullpen, there might be a couple of really good bullpen guys that could be considered part of their core. I'm not including anybody from the Braves or Dodgers from the bullpen. So sorry if you're like a really big bullpen nerd out there, but I'm just not going to go there. Okay, so these guys are the core for the Dodgers. And again, I don't want to go through everything here. You can see some of this and how some of these guys are projected in terms of their WAR for 2024. Now, what I will say is, let me explain the blue colors in this this spreadsheet. So blue basically means that this team, and right now we're on the Dodgers page, these guys are the better players at this position compared to the Braves. So Will Smith gets the nod over Sean Murphy, okay, for instance. Mookie Betts is already been talked about. He's going to be the primary second baseman for the Dodgers. He gets the nod over Ozzie Albies in WAR projections. Gavin Lux at shortstop actually is projected to be better than Orlando Arcia. Shohei Ohtani obviously is projected to be better than Marcell Ozuna at DH. Okay, so you have that. Now, Freddie Freeman actually is not projected to be as good as Matt Olson. So that's what that's showing you. If there's a darker blue, that means the Dodgers in this case have a bigger edge than the Braves at those positions. Okay. Now let's go to the next column, the final year that these guys will be around. And what you will start to see with these numbers, especially if you really focus in on the core guys, is that yes, you have a lot of guys. You have several guys around for a long time. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Yamamoto especially, right? But you do have some guys nearing free agency. And as you get to the final column, you also have guys who are getting older. So I think this is one of the biggest differences between the Dodgers and the Braves, is the Dodgers core is simply older than the Braves core. And that doesn't mean they're necessarily old right now, right? But in 3 to 4 years, they will be on the wrong side of 30. Almost all of them will be on the wrong side of 30 outside of Yamamoto. So, of course, Yamamoto is young. Now, Bobby Miller, if he turns into something, if Gavin Lux turns into something, they'll still be under 30. But the rest of the core that the Dodgers have locked up for a long time are going to be older. Now, Mookie Betts will be 34 by 2027. That's not necessarily old, but his best years could be behind him. Freddie Freeman will be all the way up to 37 years old and in the last year of his contract by the 2027 season. Okay, so again, all these projections that you see on the screen for 2024, if you're getting into your 30s and especially late 30s, all of those projections are going downward, right? You're just on the wrong side of 30 and age comes for everybody. So now, look, here's the truth with the Dodgers. As we know, as they've proven over this offseason, they have plenty of money to spend. They have really, really deep pockets. So, yes, they could supplement with a lot of new players. But here's another thing that baseball has proven over many years. You can't really buy championships. I mean, that is a truth of baseball. Um, and I think one of the reasons for that is with free agency in baseball, you're always buying older players and you're buying the back half of most players' careers once they get to free agency. And so, you can spend a lot of money, but it's really hard for most of your core to be free agents. So if you go backwards into some of these other columns that I have here, you'll notice that while the Dodgers have some homegrown talent, really only two of their core guys are homegrown. And Will Smith, being one of those guys, is nearing free agency. So they have a pretty good number of free agents that they've had to pay big money to. And of course, Yamamoto and Ohtani are the most recent of those and the most extreme examples of those. But Freddie Freeman is another recent example. And then, even the trades that they've had, they've extended guys with really big contracts like Mookie Betts and Tyler Glasnow. So a ton of money, and you could say maybe not as efficiently spent as the Braves. But again, the point I would make with the Dodgers and their potentially long-term success, if we're talking about building a dynasty, of a great team, I think the Dodgers actually might have a hard time being, the best team in baseball for more than 2 or 3 years. You get to year 3, 4, especially year 5, year 6, you might start seeing some real regression for these guys, for a Mookie Betts, even for Ohtani. He's coming off his second Tommy John. You just don't know what Ohtani's going to look like 5 years from now. Glass now, he's a guy that's never really fully been healthy or had a full season. So I do think there's a lot of question marks with the Dodgers. That I'm not saying that they're not a great team. I think the Dodgers have created and put together an incredibly good team. But as we also know, it's not easy to just assemble. Think about the Mets, okay? It's not easy to just assemble talent and it works. It might work, and I think the Dodgers have a good chemistry and a good clubhouse and all those things. So I think they will be very good and will be the chief team that the Braves are going to have to take on over the next several years. But again, I think their true window with this team is probably 3 years, and then they're going to start seeing some regression. Okay, so now as we compare that to the Braves, okay, again, you can see who I determine as the Braves core. I don't have Max Fried or Charlie Morton in the core, of course, because they could be gone after 2024. I don't have Bryce Elder in the core because I think he needs to prove himself for a full season, and the second half of last year just really soured a lot of us to Bryce Elder. So he needs to step up and prove that. Jared Kelenic is the other really interesting one. Again, he has never really proven it at the big league level, but he's a young, talented guy who is under control for a long time. So if he has a good year this year, then maybe that changes. Okay, so, what you immediately note as you look at this spreadsheet is the Braves have way more homegrown talent than the Dodgers. And of course, as we know, they've locked up that talent with some pretty good extensions. You could say team friendly, but that being said, I mean, we know the Braves are spending money, but they're spending it in very different ways than the Dodgers. There's only 2 free agents on this list, and that's Marcell Ozuna and Charlie Morton. Both of those guys could be gone by the end of 2024. And then, of course, the Braves have also supplemented with a few key trades. Sean Murphy, Matt Olson, Arcia was gotten through a trade, and then, of course, Jared Kelenic this offseason. So you've had a couple trades supplementing the roster, but a lot of what the Braves have done has been homegrown. Now, a couple of these guys I'm determining as homegrown. You might disagree with me. I put Max Fried and Huascar Ynoa in as homegrown. Yes, those guys were gotten via trade, but it was pretty early on in their minor league careers, and most of their development happened in the Braves organization. So I'm determining them as homegrown. So anyways, that's how the Braves have kind of done things. And you can see the WAR projections here, and there's a lot of blue here on, the Braves they just honestly are a better lineup. Now, if you said compare the top 4 in the Braves lineup or the top 5 in the Braves lineup to the Dodgers might win that. It would be close, but they might win that. But the Braves win it 1 through 9, and that's how baseball is, of course, played. And they're much deeper roster, and you can imagine the Braves have already proved it when they won in 2021. Acuna went down, they still won the World Series, right? So if you have a deeper roster of talent, you can still win. Now, what you guys already know as Braves fans is these guys, this core is locked up for a long time. And a long time, a lot of these guys, right, are young. And so it's not just locked up, but it's locked up earlier in their careers. And the Braves have a great, talented core of younger players. So by 2027, by the 2027 season, you can see that the Braves are still relatively young. Yeah, they'll have some guys in their 30s, but they'll be in their lower 30s, and you would still determine them to be kind of at the back end of their prime, but not on maybe the downslope of their career by this point. And they would still have guys like Michael Harris, who would only be 26 years old in 2027. Acuna will only be 29. Ozzie Albies will only have just turned 30. Austin Riley will only have just turned 30 by 2027. I think we forget, and I think a lot of people across baseball forget how young the Braves actually still are. I mean, the idea that Austin Riley and Ozzie Albies will only be 30 years old 3-4 years from now is crazy. So, the Braves are just in such a good position long term. And that's why when I hear all these stories, all these narratives on MLB TV or on ESPN that the Dodgers have created the super team, I think it's just recency bias. They are really, really good. They are going to be really hard to beat, but the Braves are at least just as good in 2024, and I think they're far better in the long term than the Dodgers are. So, by Fangraphs, the Braves are the better team. Ultimately, it's the starting rotations for the Braves and Dodgers are really close. Fangraphs likes the Dodgers bench and bullpen a little better than the Braves, but the Braves have, by a pretty wide margin, a better pool of starting position players. And then ultimately, the Braves have a 53.5 WAR projection, whereas the Dodgers have a 50.6 WAR projection. And what that breaks down to is Fangraphs projecting the Braves at 97 wins, which is a really high number for Fangraphs, and the Dodgers projecting at 91. So look, Fangraphs is not the Bible. It's not the truth of what's going to happen in baseball, but it has proven to be, especially Zip's projections, has proven to be really pretty sound. Maybe not in this exact number of wins, but in the rankings of where teams typically land. And they like the Braves better. And as I look through and break down these two teams, again, they are clearly the two best teams in baseball. But I think the Braves, for a longer period of time, are going to be better. And I think that's really important to understand. So, yeah, guys, it really is all about starting pitching. And as you look at these two teams, they are definitely the best two teams in baseball. And even as the Dodgers get a little older over the next few years, they're going to be very good. Okay, I'm not denying that at all. But it really is all about how do these two teams develop their young pitchers. Right now, 2 of the 5 pitchers in the starting rotation for the Dodgers are young, developing pitchers. And for the Braves, we know that Hurston Waldrop and A.J. Smith-Shawver are potentially really, really important to the Braves' future hopes as well, right? So how do these two teams develop young starting pitching? And I think especially important to the Braves because the Braves are not going to shell out, and they've proven this, right? They're not going to shell out 300 some million dollars for a starting pitching free agent. So they need to be able to develop these guys. It's probably the reason that Max Fried is going to go, because the Braves are not willing to extend him to a big contract in his late 30s. And so this is really important. So, the Dodgers have 7 prospects knocking on the door. Now, they're not all pitching prospects, but 7 prospects that are right on the edge of Major League Baseball. But, the Dodgers, their prospect pool gets talked about a lot. They actually don't have a top 40 prospect right now. Now, a couple of them just graduated, like Bobby Miller is in the big leagues. But it's not like the Dodgers have a huge pool of really high-end prospects knocking on the door. And I do wonder how the Dodgers, their recent history of developing prospects is a little murky. I mean, the Braves over the last 5 years they've had a pretty low, low end of top prospects, at least according to all the big prospect lists out there. And yet they've hit on Spencer Strider. They've hit on Michael Harris. They've really had some really good young players come through and develop. And the Dodgers, while they've had some good players, they maybe have been a little spotty with their development. So the fact is with prospects, they don't all become all-stars. That's for sure. So the Dodgers seem, and I mentioned this already, they seem to use prospects more as trade chips, more so as trade chips as long-term core pieces. Whereas the Braves, I think they do use some prospects as trade chips, but the ones that they really believe in, they keep, right? And they develop and they invest in. And so I really wonder, as they go forward, are they willing to trade a AJ Smith-Shawver? Are they willing to trade a Hurston Waldrop for a guy like Dylan Cease? I really start to doubt that, especially if they believe in these guys. So, in my final analysis of the Braves versus Dodgers, I feel really confident. I feel really comfortable as a Braves fan that the Braves are a better team. It is not to ignore how good and how talented the Dodgers are, right? If you're saying which team has the top 5 stars, then the Dodgers probably win that battle. But that's not how baseball is played, right? It's played over 162 games. It's a really long season. You have 9 position players and you have a bunch of pitchers and you have typically a bunch of injuries that you have to overcome. And I do think the Braves are far better equipped to deal with a long season than the Dodgers are. And of course, as we know, it really is all about, because both of these teams are pretty much guaranteed to be in the playoffs each and every year over the next 5 years. It's about who shows up in the postseason. And I think for 2024, the Braves are looking better and better in those regards. The Dodgers, Ohtani's not going to pitch this year. Glasnow has never pitched more than 120 innings. Yamamoto, I mean, it all sounds good, but he's never pitched in the big league. So he's got to go out and prove it as well, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. All that might fall correctly for the Dodgers, and they'll be an incredibly dynamic and difficult team to beat. But I do think there's some big question marks. Now, that being said, the Braves have a lot of question marks in their starting staff as well. I would still love the Braves to go out and get another starting pitcher. I think when you look at projections, one thing that Fangraphs doesn't like is Ronaldo Lopez in the rotation. He's much more dynamic in the bullpen. So if you could slide him back to the bullpen and find a third or fourth starter for the starting staff for the Braves, it really benefits them a lot. So it might not need to be a Dylan Cease, but I do think the Braves need to go out and get somebody. And maybe it's a lower end free agent. Maybe it's a starting pitcher that is not on our radar. But I do think that would really benefit the Braves. But regardless of all that, guys, the Dodgers and the Braves are set up to be the rivals of the National League for the next 5 years. I think that's really fun. I don't love how the Dodgers were built this offseason, but it's hard for me to be too mad about it other than, look, I'd rather be the Braves knowing that I've got a shot every year at taking them out. I'd rather be the Braves than the Pirates or, fill in the blank of those, those small market teams that probably feel like they have no shot now. All right, guys. Well, look, I hope you enjoyed this episode of State of the Braves and a deeper dive into these really good teams. If you're a Dodgers fan out there and you just happen to be watching this, I'd like to hear your take. Uh, I do have a couple buddies out there who are Dodgers fans, so I'll probably hear from them and see what they thought of it. And I'd love to hear just your attitude about Ohtani and how the Dodgers have built their roster. But yeah, it's going to be a fun showdown in the next several years between these two great teams. But I do like how the Braves are looking long term, even better than the Dodgers. So we can take that encouragement, Braves fans, and go from there. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.